Hey folks, it's time for a special holiday edition of my show. I am not working, but also I am working. And we decided to put our Christmas tree right here this year when we've had it there in the past. And it was only after we loved our new idea that we discovered I never put an outlet in this wall anywhere. This is a renovation I did several years ago to just a dead space, sort of unfinished corner of my building. It started as a commercial rental idea that I had, and so this wall here, seen going all the way to the ceiling, was all that was here, all that I had constructed. And the bathroom was a half bath, sink and toilet that you came through the door like this. And the reason that had a wall there was because around and outside I thought, well, if you do a coffee shop or some such thing with some bistro tables, it's kind of a faux pas to enter and exit the bathroom right into the dining room area if you can help it. I thought this was a neat little way to create an alcove in a square space to put the bathroom door. And since then I had to move to a residence, and since then I am in a relationship with my tenant. I invited her to live in this space once we were together, and I cut it in with the rest of where I live, and so now this is all part of our home. And so we use the other bathroom and this clawfoot tub that was in here, which is the third component to a full bathroom with a shower that came down from above and the controls on the wall, is no longer necessary. And someday I'd like to go back to this being the door, which is what trust me, stick with me here. So that's why what I'm doing out here for an outlet, it's important to locate it somewhere to the right of there, so that someday when I take this down and away, the outlet isn't too near the outside corner in a funky kind of a aesthetic, and it's just sort of roundabout in here somewhere. And that'll obviously do us for plugging in the tree and anything else if we move the credenza and television set or something over there, and then we've got what we need. In fact, now that I'm saying that, it makes me want to do a 2-gang outlet. We're just going to do a single gang outlet for right now. It's easy enough to add another one. So how do I get us there without tearing it all apart up here where it's finished? We're going to look for a way to find that location downstairs. And so the first thing is, how do I find the center line of this wall? So I'm sure to drill up in it, I've got to have some kind of a landmark in the basement to the center line of the wall. And I'm fortunate that I've got this conduit penetration that ran up here, and this was my thinking years ago, and we're going to run into some of my jankiness, and if it's really, really janky, I'm just going to blame it on my dad, because I didn't have my eyes on him all the time. But for whatever reason, because a lot of the building had, like over there, conduit, and that's the way the switch was in this room, steel conduit, and it's how the things are kind of done around here, because the building was built before there was electricity. It was all acetylene generator in the basement and acetylene lamps in here, which I'll go through when I give you a tour of the building someday. But since it had the feel of an existing turn-of-the-century building that later was electrified in that way, I wanted to stick to that aesthetic, and I may or may not modify that in the future, but that's how we got here. Again, long story short, I've got a landmark for the surface, at least of the baseboard for this wall. So if we go baseboard to baseboard out here, I know I've got 3.5 stud, 4.5 with 2 1/2-inch layers of drywall on it, and then another 1.5 and 3/4 inch and 3/4 inch lumber. So 4.5 to 5.5 plus 3/4 inch is 6 1/4 total thickness. So that's 3 1/8 from the edge of the conduit, kind of. Well, it's inside the thing here, but you get the idea. We're going to want to move over to a certain degree from that conduit to be in the center line of this wall, and we're going to want to do that at a certain distance that way. And I made a measurement, but prior to that, I just took note of the fact that it's about however far to here this wall tees in to this wall. And that has a lot of drywall returns so that you have somewhere to go with the edges of all these drywall boards. There's just a big cluster of studs in there, so we want to avoid that location at all costs, which is fine, because if we move over 16 inches here, that's still nowhere near where we wanted to really be. And so I figured 78 inches from the center line of that conduit in this aspect here, and about 2.5 or so inches over from it will put us in the middle where we want to be. So now I can go downstairs and I can find that location. Further, I can see the overhead beam for the second floor and the post for it, and I know that upstairs there's a post here, there's a post here, and there's a post in the basement. And just like this beam comes through, this basement beam, we'll see it comes through here. And when there's a beam doing this, you know that the joists that lay on it are at 90 degrees. So we know our joists come from the outside wall into this beam, and then they sister over, and a separate piece of lumber right there as a joist comes over from here to the next beam, which is actually against the basement stairs. So let's go around the corner and down the basement stairs, and we'll find all of these landmarks. And despite the terribly unique situation that we're looking at here today at my house, maybe it'll help a few of you on my thinking as far as how to tackle doing something like this yourself, which was where I was trying to go here. It's a blinding ass light, but I know this area of the floor has been repaired underneath this bathroom. That's where I started here. Obviously, we've got the original joists, the original subfloor boards, and then in here, because those were a bit larger than 2x10s are nowadays, I had to go with 2x12s and notch them, but these are my new 2x12 joists. Here's our sink drain in the wall and our toilet drain. And so right over here somewhere, there he is. Oh, look, Dad never put the cover back on the box. Don't do that, kids. But there is our conduit. And so if I stick my tape to him, another thing I'll do is use a tape with a magnetic nib or whatever end. There's a magnet right in there. And I've done this already. I can reach up and over. Another thing I'll mention here is that we said, here's the edge of the baseboard, basically. Where's my pencil? Makes such a good... Here's the edge of the baseboard, right? Or what have you. And so after we do baseboard, we're here, and drywall, we're here. And so it's tough to drill up and be in the middle of the wall because the joist is right there. But happily, and maybe it's because it's close to Jesus' birthday, we're not sure, this is the joist on our side here. But as we go over there, which is where we need to drill, it's sistered. This one ends and this one begins, and it moves over. So when we get over there, we can actually be, now that's a cleat that I stuck on just to catch the end of that subfloor because that joist ended. And so anyway, we can actually be alongside this joist where the old one was occupying the space before as we move down. Now if we're right alongside the joist, we can be right in the middle of the wall. And as you can see, I found my 78 inches it ended up being. I put a mark there and I drilled up there with a 1/4 inch drill bit. So in case I came out in either of the rooms, no big deal. I certainly don't want a 1/2 inch hole or anything any larger. There's no reason to. I can over drill that when I get there. The other thing I noticed when I drilled up there was an awful lot of consistent density, which makes me think I'm right into a stud. So now I'm going to go get a piece of wire and poke it up in there, and if it comes to the end of a 3 or 4 inch drill bit, which is what I had, that I bottomed out, that has gone through 3/4 of an inch, if not 1 inch boards for subfloor. And then there's I believe it's just 3/8 of an inch hardwood that I've had out of there. It was a thinner, shittier, cheaper hardwood. Or was it? I'll be damned if I can't remember. Anyway, there's only a couple inches at most. And then there's 1.5 inch sole plate. So that's the kind of thinking we've got to do here. See, we haven't necessarily gone through everything. It's a little bit deceiving. So I may get a longer 1/4 inch bit. I got a nice long boy. And put 6 or 7 inch, do drilling until I either run obviously out into the wall bay, empty space, or if I'm just consistently getting wood after a couple of more inches, if you know what I mean. Wow, wow, wow. We'll know we're in a stud, and we'll just move to one way or the other, obviously a matter of an inch or two, and we'll be what we want. And then we'll open it up to a 5/8 of an inch. Half will work. 5/8 is better, because what we're going to come back and look at is doing a careful, neat job of cutting a square hole just for the gang box and drywall, using an old work box which doesn't require a stud to secure it. But then prior to installing it, we're going to send our wire up through our little diameter hole down here until somebody upstairs can reach through our big rectangular hole and get that wire and drag it out through the wall. And then we'll poke it through the box, put the wall, box back in the wall, and we'll make our connections in the basement. But for now, let's come back and look at that in a few minutes.